To the big political story of the coming week, the ANC is gearing up for one of its most consequential gatherings in years. From December the 8th to the 11th, the party will convene its National General Council, the NGC, at Birchwood in Boksburg in Gauteng, a critical mid-term review that comes after its historic electoral losses and amid deepening questions about the party's renewal, its performance in government and tensions within the government of national unity. This year's NGC is expected to interrogate everything from stalled organisational reform and local government failures to economic recovery, coalition politics, and even the state of South Africa's relationship with the United States following recent diplomatic tensions. With expectations high and internal pressure mounting, the ANC heads into this meeting with more at stake, and some would say more than ever before. So for more on this, I'm told I'll be joined on the line by Mahlengi Bhengu, ANC spokesperson, as well as political analyst, Professor Lesiba Teffo. Let me just try and see if I do have Mahlengi and the line. Prof, good afternoon. I do see you there, Prof. In fact, before we get Mahlengi Bhengu, let me start with you, Prof. What makes this gathering so critical for the life of the ANC? I've been going through some of the documents released ahead of the meeting itself, a lot of emphasis on the Freedom Charter, the National Democratic Revolution, and the likes. But what makes it critical at this point in our political trajectory?
Yeah, it's very simple. The answer to that is very simple. They have never lost power until 2024. So indeed, there's a moment of reckoning. This is an opportunity for them to sit back, make a serious introspection, and acknowledge that perhaps we didn't heed critical voices yesterday when they advised that this day is bound to come when the people will vote with their feet and they will never come back. It is seldom very difficult once they do to get them back. But this is where they are, and they have an opportunity to self-reflect. I have an abounding belief in the ability of people to turn their lives around. They can do it, and they have a good chance this time to do it, precisely because they have learned the hard way. The arrogance of power yielded nothing but absolute defeat and humiliation. And at this juncture, if they just go back and take that seminal document and make it their Bible through the eye of the needle, work on that, they can turn their fortunes around.
Yeah, and in fact,
I'll get back to that at a later stage.
In fact, let's pick up on that theme, because that's one of the themes in the base documents in framing the discussions for the NGC. They talk about the quality of leadership and saying that if they are to advance the NDR, National Democratic Revolution, and you and I can go into the details of the NDR in a moment, but the argument is that if they don't improve on the quality of leadership, woe unto the NDR and its lofty ambitions.
For how long have we been telling them that? And instead of heeding critical voices, they sought to vilify, renounce, and denounce. And those voices were voices of patriots, some of whom owe nothing but loyalty to the national flag and the national constitution, not the colors of any T-shirt or any political party. If only they had that. But I think they have the capacity to turn their fortunes around, given what went wrong what happened not wrong, what happened last time. Go back to that seminal document. Listen and understand and hear them out on the ground when they say you are where you are precisely because of cadre deployment, precisely because of the tender system, precisely because you, rather than listen to us, you call us names when we say the borders cannot be open for all. It has never happened under the sun, and South Africa is not going to win to think that it can carry the whole continent on her shoulders. It doesn't work like that in the real world. Hear them out on the ground. Instead of calling them names, hear them out, please.
So let's talk about the content of the NGC and what we expect. So ahead of the NGC of the ANC, much speculation surrounds the role of the president, current and continuing, perhaps, in terms of the leadership not only of the ANC, but more importantly, leadership of the state. The NGC in its timing comes at least 2 years before a national elective conference of the ANC, and it has become typical that you start hearing rumblings about succession, about a possible recall, and calling for a resignation of any sitting president. What's the precedent for that? Perhaps put it in historical context for us. What makes it such that instead of focusing on everything that's in the base document, the obsession in the days and weeks before tends to be on what's the role of the president? What security of tenure does he have?
Yeah, now you see, those are the things that brought them where they are, right? They focus on personalities. They sing and dance rather than to discuss policies and say, but we have been talking this renewal, but we are not winning. Where are we getting it wrong, right? Instead of focusing on the individual. Remember, it's far too easy and cheap for me to blame Jacob Zuma for everything and anything under the sun, including the weather. But he was there with them. He was not alone. Post-Zuma, have we seen much improvement? Some would argue that things have gotten worse, but I don't want to belabor that point. I'm merely saying they must just accept that this time singing and dancing must stop. They must make some critical reflection, take the document through eye on the needle, put it at the center. There is a Mahlengi Commission, but not committee, that is proposing a criteria for electing leaders and membership of the ANC, have a degree, have a diploma, and so on and so forth. That is the way to go. You cannot deploy people simply because yesterday they could sing and dance or they could break or bend structures. Yes, we did destroy, but this is the time for reconstruction. This is the time for building.
Professor Teffo, perhaps with reference to the historic NGC of 2005, which in many ways marked the beginning of the ascendance of then ANC Deputy President Jacob Zuma, in that the delegates were able to force an agenda item, force onto the agenda discussion of his reinstatement into the leadership of the party, which is seen to have been the beginnings of that rise, of that wave that swept him to the helm of the ANC. With that reference in mind, how secure do you believe this current president's tenure is, and just his hold on the entirety of its NEC, National Executive Committee, and enforcing cohesion with some of the voices that at the start of the first term of his leadership of the ANC used to be quite critical, but many of them are now outside of the ANC?
Do they have an alternative among themselves for now? And that I shouldn't be asking this question, and this question should not be arising, especially in the South African political context and discourse. Because if only we made sure that the Electoral Act was amended, that a man from Lephalale, Musina, Matlotsane, Mkwamashu could raise his or her hand and say, I'm available, rather than to be beholden to a liberation movement. This question would not arise. There are about 50 million or 40 million, among whom we could get a proper, qualified, capable political leader or head of state. But we are beholden and we are bound until we change or amend the Electoral Act. For now, Ramaphosa, if you push me, yes, he is secure. He will still be there on Friday. And one of the principal reasons why I'm saying this with relative confidence is because human beings across the globe, especially on the African continent, follow power wherever it goes.
Yeah.
For now, he has political power. He can appoint and disappoint. He can promote and he can also build or destroy, depending on the terminology you want to use. But for now, he's secure. He has got political power. He's in charge of the state, and he's even in charge of the political party. I don't see for now an alternative within the ANC for him. But there are, of course, that said, good men and women, but some of them have been sidelined, vilified, renounced and denounced, precisely because they tried to uphold principles that really built the ANC into a formidable force over the years.
So, Prof, lastly, let's just focus on the themes and the policy direction and what the ANC hopes will help it to resonate with South Africans and the electorate in particular. If we accept what you are saying, that it seems that the penny has dropped based on the electoral performance, what makes the emphasis on the NDR and the Freedom Charter, which is peppered through much of the discussion as it's framed? For instance, the base document ahead of the NGC, and I quote here, the title for it is ANC Renewal to Advance the Freedom Charter Forward to a National Democratic Society based on social justice, shared prosperity, and human solidarity. That's the title of the base document. The theme for the NGC as a whole is, quote, the year of renewal to make the ANC a more effective instrument of the people to achieve the vision of the Freedom Charter. The people shall govern, the people shall share in the wealth of the country. Why the Freedom Charter and the NDR so prominently versus unity and renewal a couple of years ago versus radical economic transformation a couple of years ago?
You know, all that I hear, Lesiba tell me, it's nothing but too much English. Just too much English, that's what I hear from what you have read and from the documents that I have right now. Incidentally, I will be there, right? But it is that language, those documents, that maybe they must just suspend, because they've had those for several years. They've had those in almost all the meetings. For the past 15 years, they were talking renewal, transformation. I am saying, I don't want to go deep into the negative. I'm just saying, if I cannot contribute towards taking South Africa forward, I don't want to be involved in the debates. I'm saying they have the capacity to turn things around. One, change the Electoral Act. Please manage migration. Please do away with the tender system. Please do away with cadre deployment. Accentuate and mainstream meritocracy rather than deployment, because that leads to kleptocracy. Let some of them stand up and say, I'm wrong. If they did the things that I'm saying now, and I've been saying them for the past 15 years, the ANC wouldn't be where it is today. And they wouldn't have really gone the route they did last year. But I believe they have the potential to turn a corner if they make a critical introspection. And luckily for them, and for myself and others, I believe in the GNU. And in the GNU, I believe and I see that we are turning a corner, we are going in the right direction. But a lot still needs to be done.
All right.
But I'll give the GNU my vote at any time.
All right, Professor Lesiba Teffo, let's leave it there for this afternoon.